Astronaut John Crichton, on testing his experimental spacecraft, ends up falling into a wormhole and sent to the far side of the universe. Taking refuge aboard the space leviathan Moya, formerly a prison transport, he finds himself an outlaw in this region of space, on the run from the military forces of the region. First by Bylar Crace, a Sebastian peacekeeper commander, whose brother collided with Crichton's ship, causing his own death, which Crace blames him for, leading to the man becoming more unhinged over time. Then by Scorpius, a hybrid between the Sebastians and another species called Scarans, who are basically space dragons. Drawn to Crichton due to a third species referred to as the Ancients, granting Crichton stewardship over knowledge of how to safely traverse wormholes, that Scorpius wants to use to give his and Crace's side a military advantage over the Scarans in mounting hostilities that are leading towards open war.
How did you survive this far?
His allies in avoiding these forces include Aaron Sun, a former Sebastian peacekeeper that acts as the series' female lead and Crichton's love interest, a no-nonsense military savant that spent her whole life as part of the enlisted forces, who found herself excommunicated from them in Crace's madness following his brother's death, with Crichton reaching out to her to help her find a new existence beyond what she was limited to, and the two's relationship developed over a long time and was well done.
Compassion? What is compassion?
Compassion? You're kidding, right?
My breeding? Since birth, it's what I am.
You can be more. On the oath you took.
Your oath means nothing to me. You made sure of that. You destroyed everything. I lost everything because of you.
Aaron.
Everything I lost isn't worth a damn.
Ka Dago, a Luxon warrior turned farmer who was framed for the murder of his Sebastian wife by said wife's brother. His own quest being to come to terms with what happened, clear his name, find his lost son, and rebuild his life. Pa'u Zoltazan, a Delvian who are humanoid plants, a former anarchist turned devoted priestess, who acts as the group's voice of reason and doubles as the early series scientist and mystic. Virginia Hay, her actress, however, ended up suffering health issues due to the blue makeup for her role, which caused her debilitating kidney damage, and while she did want to continue playing Zahn in a reduced capacity throughout the series, a miscommunication between her agent and the show's staff led her instead to be written out of the series early in Season 3. Dominar Rigel XVI from the frog-like species Hynerian, a deposed emperor with the selfishness and chip on his shoulder you would expect from former royalty. Despite this egocentrism and all the troubles this results in for the cast, Rigel adds to the crew diplomacy and political experience, at least when they can get him to think about more than himself.
We're all choosing one or two items we want. The rest is to pay any fee for Moya's remedy.
Sorry, Rigel, I misjudged you.
Pilot. Moya's, pilot. Symbiotically bonded to her to run her systems and maintain her form while dealing with the needs of the crew. All to realize a dream to see the vast breadths of the cosmos. Pilot ends up the most put on among the crew due to his essential duties, and to cope with the ongoing insanity they all fall into.
But I've never seen such a deficient species. You're not particularly smart, can hardly smell, can barely see, and you're not even vaguely physically or spiritually imposing. Is there anything you do well?
While not part of the series' opening credits, Pilot is voiced by Crace's actor Lonnie Tupu, a result of the production staff having difficulty finding a good actor for Crace, and ultimately having Lonnie do line reads for the character after he was already signed on to voice Pilot. This casting decision allowed them to bring Crace back for stories at any time they needed him throughout Crace's own character arc, which came to mirror Pilot's own, as Crace was excommunicated from the Peacekeeper's forces and bonded to Moya's offspring, Talon.
Talon. Starburst.
Chiana, an outcast from the totalitarian Nabari species, who revels in the freedom of the universe outside of her oppressive state. But due to her own impulsiveness and having to live as a grifter, she gets herself into trouble early on as she doesn't like to listen to anyone but herself and the urges of her own desires. At least until it costs her someone she cares about. Chiana was a late addition to Season 1, resulting from the showrunners realizing they needed a different dynamic for the show to find its footing, and liking what the character brought to the table to round out the core cast. And while there are other major characters I could add to and recap that are relevant throughout the series, this was Farscape, created by Rockne S. O'Bannon and the Jim Henson Company, airing from 1999 to 2003 on the Sci-Fi Channel. Farscape was the linchpin in a science fiction series renaissance in the early 2000s. And it remains my favorite science fiction series of all time. And it was cancelled so Sci-Fi could finance the Battlestar Galactica reboot that everybody came to hate because its entire point just broke down to, don't have sex with robots.
This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move.
Yes, I am still bitter. Yeah, the thing was, Farscape was originally planned as a 5-season series, and Sci-Fi announced its cancellation to them the day they finished filming the final episode of Season 4, which ended on a cliffhanger which was intended to be resolved next year. Had they known in advance, they would not have ended it like that.
This decision is likely to be compared years from now to NBC's short-sighted cancellation of the original Star Trek. By comparison, Enterprise is a lumbering dinosaur. For Sci-Fi to cite economic reasons for denying fans a final year of Farscape would seem to be at odds with the network's mission as an entertainment brand.
Fortunately, Brian Henson, son of Jim Henson and the head of his company, had the awareness to retain the rights to the series, financing on their own a proper conclusionary miniseries, Farscape: The Peacekeeper Wars, which acted as a super condensed version of the story arc intended for the full Season 5. Peacekeeper Wars, while not perfect, I feel fully actualized what the series had evolved into, ultimately giving the warring factions what they wanted, and making them realize it wouldn't get them what they actually desired.
I'm sorry. I tried to explain it. I tried to tell them all.
Here are the rules. Find a penny, pick it up. Double it. You've got 2 pennies. Double it again, 4.
Round and round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows, but it all adds up. Quick. This is insane, Craig.
God! 4 years on and you're finally getting that.
And beginning in 2008, Rockne O'Bannon was able to obtain the rights to publish a comic series which dealt with a number of the still remaining subplots intended for Season 5 that the Peacekeeper Wars was not able to address due to time. The comics are not great, though in comparison to the other post-series comic runs out there like Buffy, Angel, Charmed, or even the Stargate post-series novels that are just plain terrible, at least Farscape's comics tried to retain the spirit and setting most consistently as they were, instead of allowing the medium change to let them do whatever they wanted. And fortunately, while the show was cancelled, most of the cast have done well for themselves. Ben Browder and Claudia Black signing on to the final 2 seasons of Stargate SG-1 to, well, I don't dislike the final seasons of that show, and it was nice to see them back.
Piece of advice. If you're gonna rip something off, think of something a little more obscure.
The plan if we don't starburst the dries out of here.
Oh, son of a hazmat!
Shots! Okay, you got me. I have no idea what that is.
With Ben Browder then having cameos in Doctor Who and even Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which in the latter case was a result of James Gunn himself having loved Farscape and that influencing the Guardians movies. And it amused me that the character Ben cameoed as had the swagger about him that mimicked when Crichton impersonated Peacekeepers. Claudia Black has since become more known as a fixture in games from BioWare, voicing Morrigan in Dragon Age, as well as Quarian Admiral Daro Zen and the Asari matriarch Aethita, aka Liara T'Soni's dad, in Mass Effects 2 and 3. Virginia Hay owns her own perfume and soap manufacturing company. Anthony Simcoe performs in the band's Signal Room and works as a corporate trainer. Lonnie Tupu and Gigi Edgley have remained active as actors in Australian and New Zealand film and television. And Wayne Pygram some might recognize without his makeup as Governor Tarkin in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Now, I'm trying not to give too many spoilers for the series as, well, I'd really love it if you all went out to watch the series yourself if you haven't already, as most of it has held up, and it is on a couple streaming services. Though, if you're going to pick up the show on DVD or Blu-ray, well, a bit of warning. The original master tapes for the first 3 seasons were lost. I keep seeing conflicting reasons as to why, but most just blame the Sci-Fi Channel for whatever did ultimately happen to them. While the masters still exist for the 4th season and were used for these later collections, well, the video copies for the first 3 are upscales and cleanups of the original VHS and DVD releases and are in full screen format, despite the entire series originally being shot in widescreen. Nothing you can do about it at the end of the day. Really, what I'm talking about now is Farscape has turned 20 this year, and I've missed enough anniversaries of stuff I love. And that brings us to what I'm actually reviewing, Farscape the game. Released in 2002, I have literally been looking for this game for 17 years. A PC game I knew existed since it was released, and yet in all that time, I was never able to get my hands on a copy. As any place I tried to find it, any mainstream game store and used game dealer that still did PC games back in the day, had never even heard of it, even if they knew of the main series. It has remained my white whale as a gamer and fan of this franchise, and I know, it's a licensed game, and licensed games have a deserved bad rap. But regardless of that, I just wanted a chance to see what the story was and what this missing chapter might have added. And now, in 2019, I finally found a copy! It is a digital copy, but come on, the game is over 15 years out of print. You can't blame me for that. Though it probably doesn't help that this game was made by an obscure developer and publisher. Red Lemon Studios went under the year after this game launched. They'd never been much of anything in the first place. Its only other notable work was Braveheart the Game, of all things. Farscape the Game, however, was not the cause of them going under. The company had been having financial difficulties for years before it got published, and bankruptcy was an inevitable fate of it before they even began production. This licensed content just being the last chance to dissolve the company without it being left in massive debt. The publisher Crucial Entertainment, known for a few different PC games back in the 90s, also went under around the same time, though it was already long in the process of being bought out by Simon & Schuster Publishing due to them owning the publishing rights to EVE Online, a space simulation MMORPG that is still running to this day. They are the only ones that ultimately released this game to even get it out there as well, but it's kind of obvious this was only put out there to fill a contract as well. Even for 2002, when this finally came out, yeah, everything looked far better than even among just PC titles. Hell, you know what I played a lot of back then on my PC before I started doing console gaming more regularly? Star Trek Voyager Elite Force. Same niche and genre of interest. They were competing products as Farscape was kicking Voyager's ass at the time with regards to reception in sci-fi circles, and yet despite releasing in 2000, Elite Force looked and played a lot better. Hell, same year as Farscape the game, Elite Force's developer Raven Software released Star Wars Jedi Outcast. On just a pure visual level, both of them crushed this game in comparison. I mean, come on! Look at this! This would have looked dated by 1998 standards. And I was playing Diablo, StarCraft Classic, and Command & Conquer Red Alert in 1998. The stages are just the same barren, drab, and disjointed landscapes. Apparently this is a desert world for their setting, but even when you go to other places, it's the same everywhere. Hell, look at this stage on Moya. Does this really feel like it's supposed to be Moya? Well, okay, the curved corridors are kind of like Moya, but aesthetically? Hell no. And I know there were developers back in that period which could do this. The original Fallout, 1997. Baldur's Gate, 1998. It's not an age thing. Even if this was released earlier, say alongside when the first season was running in 1999, it would have looked bad for the time. 2002? No chance in hell. Though the first season thing would have been appropriate, the game apparently takes place as if things were in the first season, possibly an idea of how long the game had been stuck in development, as at the time it finally got out they were in Season 4, and continuity-wise would fall in between approximately episodes 17 and 18. Why then? Well, 2 plot points. 1, Chiana is part of the crew. Yes, I actually got J.G. Edgley's autograph at a convention over a decade ago. And her introductory episode, Durka Returns, was episode 15. And Moya is still pregnant with her son Talon, which gets resolved at the end of the season. Episode 18 is when the story arc that ends the season starts up, so you can't do it any later, and between episodes 17 and 18 allows Chiana to be an acclimated member of the crew, and shows up right before that story arc starts. There are additional tells, too. Like Crichton still being in his IASA clothing when starting in Season 2, he got some Peacekeeper-styled vests, pants, and jackets alongside most of the cast getting a wardrobe update. Or the fact that the Peacekeepers are still pretty hotly on their tail, which tapered off in the second season. the game actually opening with Moya under attack and quickly being taken over by peacekeepers. Gee, no wonder they went with John's plan to masquerade as a still active prison ship in A Bug's Life if they lost that quickly. Crichton and Aaron's fighter ship, called a Prowler, alongside Shiana for some reason, try to dogfight the assault ships, with it going out like you'd think as they're shot down. Why was Aaron not in her Prowler anyways? She's the one with military training, whereas Crichton didn't actually intentionally kill anybody for most of the first season. Regardless, they end up in the wasteland, only with Crichton's old reliable pulse pistol Winona with them for defense. Spotting a settlement nearby, they make for it and have to cut through all the wildlife to get there. This is the pain of the game right here. You've got a single weapon for 2 party members, melee weapons are complete garbage so don't even try, and if either one of them dies, it's game over. You've got limited health to go by, and there's no easy way to strafe with your characters to try and avoid shots, nor do the camera angles help. Hell, I had to reprogram the entire control scheme to even get them close to what is standard for PC gaming, simply because otherwise the buttons for everything were all over the place. Not like that's saying much, as the controls I used most were the ones that reoriented the camera, as dear god, camera controls were crap back then. And still for several years after this as well, come to think of it. And ammo in a multitude of stages in the game is beyond scarce. The primary source of it being in the town, but to even buy up that ammo or even get better guns, you need to sell them the discarded carapaces of your enemies to get money for the transaction. Of course, because resource balancing wasn't something competently implemented in games at the time, and has since been lost in the age of the microtransaction. Damn you, Activision, Ubisoft, and Electronic Arts! You will always use more ammo than you can regain, even killing the creatures that infest this rock. Worse, there's a resistance system the game implements that's based on the type of weapon you're using. Energy, i.e. pulse pistol, chemical, as in flamethrower, or physical. However, I could not ever tell what enemy had what resistance. I assumed it had to do with this small reticle under the enemies that showed up when you shot it, but that more seemed like a health indicator than anything as time went on. At least most of the time, if you click on an enemy and it's in range, you can shoot it until it dies, and your health does regenerate. And you can buy health packs for the emergency heal, so it's not complete incompetence for the time, even though spending money in the health packs then wastes money that should be going to ammo. But the difficulty curve is extremely steep when you start out as, quite frankly, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know where the hell I'm going. I don't know why I'm collecting this crap, and if I don't actually collect everything in a stage that's dropped from enemies before me or my party members drop the last guy, there's a good odds I'll just straight out lose whatever I missed. As you'd expect from games this old, the party AI isn't that intelligent, only knowing enough to follow you and fire at your enemies. And certain party members have a different trick to them that acts as a special skill. Crichton's the game's technician, Shiana has a stealth mode to her, Rigel can fit in small ducts to traverse unnoticed, Dargo can knock out enemies with his tongue.
What is the matter with you people? Tongue.
And once he gets his Qualta blade back, he's the only one with unlimited ammo. Speaking of, I love that gun blade. And Aaron... Actually, Aaron doesn't do anything special this entire game, really. Oh, you can give her a really big gun, but that's about it. Nor does Zahn, for that matter. They're both there for about a stage and a half each, and then they're done. Dargo doesn't even get that. It's one stage escaping imprisonment on Moya and freeing Aaron so they can take back Moya and flush every enemy on the ship out into space. And after that, their role is pretty much done. I'd say they were here to earn a paycheck, but really it feels like the entire cast just phoned in their performances. The only ones seeming to put an effort into things being John Hardy and Lonnie Tupu, which is to be expected of the cast's normal voice actors, and surprisingly Claudia Black as well. Who knows, maybe this is where she first mused on moving into voice acting. Hell, the team on the ground doesn't even do anything to help them, as after Shiana and Crichton show up in town and get Aaron's Prowler away from raiders and in for repairs, they're stuck doing odd jobs for the city's defense personnel. Oh, there's a subplot about the town healer being a Nabari and Shiana being suspicious of her because, well, Nabari are authoritarian control freaks due to how their society is structured, but nothing comes of Shiana's suspicions. Raider problems in the area? We take care of them in 2 engagements and they're gone. Said healer wants pieces of a dismantled medical device that can augment tissue development? Well, by this point in Farscape, they had encountered aliens that did screwy things with genetics and biology twice, and had been mind-screwed on 3 completely separate occasions, and had started to become genre-savvy to that, but no, nothing there either. Even though one of the mind-screw incidents came from a planet-wide farm that was destroying the habitability of the planet due to the crops that helped to pacify the planet's occupants, and those same plants are being grown in this game in culture farms of the planet that we have to clear of infestations as well. All the mutated and demonic imp-like looking creatures? Well, I guess that's also par for the course down here. The Xiang, a species encountered a couple times that can breathe armor-melting fire, with them having begun operating a factory and we've got to shut it down before it upsets the natives. The only difficulty in it is this one section of this place where I can't get this freaking door to open despite doing everything correctly. Gah! Most of these plot diversions are justified one way or the other with the need of some resource to actually fix Aaron's Prowler, so they can even get up back to Moya to do anything. So it is basically wasting our time. The raiders are screwing with supply shipments, then the Xiang's factory was the one making parts needed. The culture farms were so the settlement wouldn't starve, and so their owner would give us room and board for our stay, and so on and so forth. Oh, but there's an odd forest cropping up out of nowhere? In a desert where there isn't water? That apparently needs investigation and is the top priority of things that needs to be dealt with. Except, isn't the forest in the desert a good thing? Isn't reclaiming the wasteland from a barren state of being something that should be positive? This planet isn't Arrakis, Dune, desert planet. You don't lose out on the spice melange that controls the universe by making the planet a little greener. Why do I keep feeling the temptation to make Dune references? Actually, the problem is the natives of the world are rather hostile to the settlers and want their world back. Having been manipulated by a shape-shifting species called the Scorpions, who the game says in its wrap-up cutscene are in fact working for the Scarens. Ironically, there was another shape-shifting species in the series called the Colossus, I'm probably screwing up pronouncing that, introduced in Season 3 episodes as working for the Peacekeepers. But there are 2 problems with this revelation, though I admit I might be screwing up on one of them. The first, in Season 1, as far as I can remember as, I admit it has been a few years since I last rewatched the series, Scarens hadn't been introduced yet. They first showed up in Season 2. Unless you counted Scorpius himself as a Scaran-Sebastian hybrid, the first time I remember them being mentioned was the Look at the Princess mid-season episode trilogy.
You do have half a mind, Your Highness.
There are many reasons why Farscape fans generally think of Season 2 as being the strongest of them. And really, with how the show reads things as, the Scarens were the mounting threat the Peacekeepers had been building up forces to counter, but that feels more like a recontextualization of early episode content without changing what were actually happening in them kind of retcon. Also known as how retcons are supposed to be done. 2. A Scorpion had been encountered before and they had appeared as another species that was not their own, but they weren't presented as being shapeshifters in that episode, but possessing genetic augmentation technology which allowed them to appear as another species. So yeah, it wasn't a natural power of theirs, this later being reaffirmed in the post-series comics. And with that context, I don't like how this is handled at all, as when you think about it, we are siding with the invaders of a planet over its natural citizens, all because the people who settled here are making supplies that will be used against the Scarens in a war. The 5th episode of the series, the one I mentioned before with the mind-screwing plant, yeah, the populace was enslaved because of that to work in fields all day, tending to the same plants they're growing on this planet in the game, which through a refinement process is turned into a highly flammable agent known as chalk and oil that most of the weapons of the series use as ammunition. My headcanon about that episode, by the way, has always been that the Moya crew took a supply of those plants for refinement into their own supply of chalk and oil, as I can count on one hand the number of times they ever ran out of ammo. Primarily because depending on pulse pistol efficiency, one cartridge of ammo could discharge between 5 and 600 bolts. Crichton's pulse pistol Winona, for example, over 600. She's a reliable little gun that he does not want to part with ever.
Was that Winona?
Yes.
But yeah, there's the disconnect on what they're doing here. These aren't innocent farmers and tradesmen out being assaulted by savages. They're military contractors and suppliers who are being undermined by anti-authoritarian rebels, hostile powers, and natives who just want their planet back. To continue the Dune comparison, we're House Atreides siding with our mortal enemies the Harkonnens, and are trying to wipe out the Fremen, and the game's ending is trying to bend itself over backwards to justify why we're right in committing genocide. What the frell? Now, yes, the show did operate in something of a moral gray zone where the Moya crew weren't exactly all good people and wouldn't go out of their way to help others. But generally the bad guys in such situations were inconveniencing them so they'd ally with the suppressed side simply to get out of things as it wasn't their job nor moral imperative to intrude. The tail end of the game tries to write things as that, with the Underdwellers rising up and going on an offensive to slaughter everyone, and that could have worked in a we have no choice but to save ourselves situation if it weren't for one, these creatures being manipulated all along by these shapeshifters in their midst into being xenophobes, and a Farscape plot would have been to expose that manipulation, and two, we're left to side with and bargain with the Peacekeepers to even escape, when a Farscape plot would have also been to leave the Peacekeepers to their karma-driven fates as the secret insiders of these hostilities. It doesn't help either that, as the series lead, Season 1 Crichton wasn't someone that built a body count so easily. He was foremost a scientist and engineer at the time, with his fish-out-of-water status allowing him to take in aspects of what was happening that the others took for granted. Why? Because everything around him was new and wondrous, as if all the possibilities of what could be had now opened up to him.
I'm on another planet.
Hell, he even went out of his way to try and sell things peacefully with Crais when he was given the chance originally. That got screwed over because they were being manipulated by a third party into trying to kill each other, as the third party drew power from suffering, but the point that episode made with Crichton's character is, yes, he may have to kill in order to survive out here, but that does not mean he has to kill frivolously, and he does not have to kill today. With the first time I remember him taking a life was in the aforementioned episode 18 of the series A Bug's Life, where a man taken over by a space parasite that could grow to infest every race in the region is the first person Crichton makes the conscious decision to kill, because the parasite itself had briefly infected him and made his body commit the deed himself when he was out of the driver's seat. Even past that point, though, he doesn't go out of his way to kill people, merely those who appear to be deserving of it from their deeds and actions, or in self-defense for his own life, still stepping back to let karma do others in for them more often than not. So this game, having us white out entire species, an entire raider camp, every disposable mutated freak out here, with him having zero problems with it, even though the conscientious objectors among the cast he's normally part of do, it's a bigger issue for me than it might be for others with this. So, overall, I'd hate to say it, but Farscape the game sucks and is a bad representation of the series. It plays badly, the casts are badly used and badly portrayed, the enemies are indistinct blobs, the enemies you think would be the focus of everything are completely sidelined and made mostly immaterial, the continuity it's trying to tie into is completely wrong, and our hero's solution to the problem they are faced with results in planetary genocide. Why is it I keep encountering media I was a fan of that have bad entries in it think genocide's a good ending to a situation? Despite that, though, I really do feel it's a series more people should go back and have a look at, as it really has held up narratively. Hell, I still love to go back and watch my favorite episodes of the series in isolation of the rest from time to time. For those curious, my favorite episodes are the Liars, Guns, and Money trilogy from the end of Season 2. Season 2, as I said before, most fans consider the strongest written of the 4 seasons, with Season 3 sadly being the worst for a multitude of reasons. Season 1 not having its flaws held against it as they were still trying to find their footing, and Season 4 considered almost as good as Season 2 with the complexities it ended up developing, just with a few troublesome spots where everyone watching was not sure exactly where they were going until the ending episodes. And it took a while for the guys to come back together after it started up again. It still remains a strong show regardless, with the occasional zaniness of events almost always ending up entertaining as a break from the norm, and always feeling as if it fit within the wild untamed setting they found themselves in.
We are going to die.
It is a show I really do feel like I can recommend to anyone out there as something you could still like, even if it did get shafted and realized in the final form of itself. And 20 years on, I'm glad the cast has since done well for themselves, and those that did watch it still think fondly of it instead of it being something forgotten to the annals of time. Though I'm sadly also one of those people who hear rumors of it coming back, with a sequel starring John and Aaron's kid, or it being rebooted, and think that's a bad idea. Farscape sadly worked as well as it did because of the practical effects it employed, and sadly those are at best a dying art that, well, CGI for anything other than the ships would be a waste. But with any luck, the memory of this series will continue to live on strong for years to come with what we did get, and the directions it took. Just skip this game. I called it my white whale, but unlike Ahab, this didn't take me down with it. It's just another crappy licensed game not different than thousands of others. And unlike the series itself, it is deservedly forgotten and skipped. At least it won't be nagging at me anymore to see what it's about. Happy 20th anniversary, Farscape! Here's to many more years of looking up to share the wonders you've seen.